Now, when I was but a wee lad of 17, my parents came to me and they said, hey, freeloader, it's time for you to get a job. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to get a job. They're like, you know what? We saw your internet search history and it's time for you to get a job. And I was like, okay, you know what? It's fair enough. I'm going to go get a job. And I did. And my first job was actually at Barnes & Noble. My first job was at Cinemark. And I only lasted 2 weeks because they said I wasn't personable enough and they fired me. Well, who's not personable enough now, Deborah? I made $12 from my YouTube video last month. What'd you do last month? The job that really stuck was at Barnes & Noble, and it was the second place that I had ever applied. I was looking for a place that kind of, fit my sad boy aesthetic, and I figured, coffee and cigarette, I could smoke a cigarette on the break and look all mysterious, and with my swoopy red hair and blaring Blink-182, I was just, God, so mysterious and cool, but not really. I figured, why not? Give it a try. I read books on occasion. I can read, despite what some people think. I can read. I can. So I got hired on at Barnes & Noble, walked in, and they said, absolutely not. I said, please, 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 I'll do anything. And they said, yeah, fine, you're hired. And I was 17 years old. I ended up staying there for 4 years, and it was great. And it was some of the most fun, informative experiences of my life. Some of those people were the closest friends I've ever had. They were there with me all through the end of high school, through college, my first drink. The people there were amazing. The customers there were amazing. And it was just all around a great experience. The one kind of dark cloud that always hung over the air whenever I was at Barnes & Noble was the ever-looming threat of shutting down. Mine was the second store in the city. The first one closed literally like a year after I got there. And, Amazon was on the rise, and it wasn't stopping anytime soon. And, buying things online and getting them shipped to you, convenience, is very much the hot thing. And physical media, going out and buying things, are very much on the unrise, the opposite way of rising. That's where Barnes & Noble was going all the time. And it was hard for them to keep up with Amazon. Amazon put out the Kindle after they were selling books online for so long, which was a huge hit. So Barnes & Noble had to compensate and put out the Nook, and we pivoted a lot, and we tried our best. And somehow my store is still open, but the threat of being shut down or fired was in the air every single day. And much to my surprise, Barnes & Noble is taking off again. It's huge. It's everywhere. It's opening stores for the first time in like 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. I don't know. I don't do any research for this. I'm sorry. I'm a terrible YouTuber. Please subscribe. But Barnes & Noble is now doing better than ever, and I kind of wanted to figure out why. Why is it so much different than when I was working there to now? So I sat down with someone that actually works at Barnes & Noble to get their insight and to compare it to what it was like working at it in 2007 to 2012 versus now, and to kind of see what the differences are, why it's doing so well, and hopefully just get some insight onto the company as a whole. This video isn't biased one way or the other. Take from it what you will. I'll give some of my perspective. I'll let my guests talk and give their perspective as well, and we'll go from that. So go ahead and introduce yourself, would you please?
My name is Carolyn. I work at Barnes & Noble. I've been working there for probably going on like 4 years now. I started as a holiday hire back in October of 2021, and I'm still there. I was out of work for the real, going into COVID. Just coming out of shutdown was when I was like, I need something to do. And starting to work at Barnes & Noble during that, it felt really nice.
So the culture was very corporate, and that came down from our managers. They had a list of standards that we had to adhere to, we couldn't deviate from, and of course me and my 17-year-old self was like, yeah, you know what I say to standards, right? Screw them. And then they would be like, you're fired. And I'm like, okay, I apologize. Please, I need this job so much. I feel like the culture's a little bit different now. I'm going to let her give her perspective on this.
I'm very spoiled. I love all of my coworkers. I know that doesn't happen everywhere. It doesn't happen at all Barnes & Noble. We gear more towards the younger side, I will say. It's definitely, there's more women on staff, but we have a good variety. Everyone is very creative. There are people who are the go-to for music, people who are the go-to for graphic novels. I'm like the go-to for D&D a lot of the time. It's fun because a lot of times on shift we'll be like, yeah, I have a good romance recommendation for you, but you know who has a great romance recommendation for you? I'm sure it's always been a big part of Barnes & Noble, but it's really big right now because people are getting into such niche genres. Like, they know what they're looking for coming into the store a lot of the time, not all the time. So when you have someone coming in being like, hey, I want a fantasy novel with a really arrogant, cocky protagonist, I just want like something that specific, whether I know something or my coworker who like is always in the fantasy section knows something. It's like spot on.
Another big thing that I was curious about is what are people reading nowadays? Generally, there's a big enough sample size if you've worked there for long enough that you can see trends in what people are reading. Back in my day, the Wild Wild West of 2007, there wasn't romantasy. That wasn't really a thing. The big books were young adult books. People would come in and they were asking, do you have any books that are like Harry Potter? Do you have any books that are like The Hunger Games? Do you have any books that are like Divergent? And they liked the heavy hitters. They wanted books that were very similar to the heavy hitters. And luckily enough, there were a lot of copycats, so we would just send them on that way. There were a fair bit of people who came in looking for, those Fabio romance novels, older ladies. Those were very big. We had a huge religion section. I remember that took up maybe like a fifth of the store. Granted, I live in Texas. It's the deep South, partner. We love our Jesus Christ down here. Praise Almighty. But they came in looking for Bibles and a lot of religious stuff. And magazines. Magazines were a huge thing. But I was curious what people were reading nowadays versus what they were reading then.
Romantasy is its own big thing. It's one of the biggest things right now. We have a table that is a romantasy table. If you're looking for that niche, we already have a section for you to browse for it. Harry Potter was kind of like the only thing like that when it came out. Now there's so many things like that because it was so influential. I feel like now those big books already have the read-alikes all on TikTok and social media. They kind of are given their recommendations already. Not to say they don't need them a lot of the time, which is fun. We have customers coming in looking for everything under the sun. But that being said, our top sellers are like manga and romance. I think that's so fun. We also have a good mix in of classic lovers, nonfiction lovers. We get people coming in looking for like Atomic Habits, 48 Laws of Power. Those are like constantly being put in people's hands.
So when I worked there, I worked at a location that was attached to the mall, which means we got a lot of foot traffic, people just trying to get to the mall and get out. Malls used to be a third place. Us teenagers, we'd go and hang out there. So our parents could, fuck off and go eat at the Cheesecake Factory and, enjoy their lives without us for a second because we didn't have iPads back then. They couldn't just be like, you want to play some Cocomelon?
So, back in the day, jingle, 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 back in the day.
And this dangle little iPad in front of us to give us instant dopamine all the time. We had to go get our dopamine the old-fashioned way, going and looking around at things we couldn't afford. They would give us $20 and be like, all right, have at it. And we'd run into Forever 21 and, buy a pair of Converse or something. So Barnes & Noble was a part of that, right? So we had a lot of teenagers coming in, not really looking to buy anything. They're just kind of rummaging around. But we were also next to a university, so we got a lot of students. But I was curious about what the type of people that they're seeing at Barnes & Noble now, because reading is a little different now with TikTok and everything like that. So I asked the question, what kind of people are coming in and reading these days?
I think that Barnes & Noble is I like to call it like cushy retail. It's still retail. You get crazy everything. Again, I'm in like a city area, so it's fairly diverse. Definitely a little more towards the younger, a little more chronically online, I would say. So TikTok really helps us. We have regulars that sit in our cafe from opening to closing. We know them all by name. People will walk around all day. They work in our offices, in our cafe. They just hang out, like to the point where like sometimes when you're walking around shelving, you run into the same person too many times. You're like, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to give them their privacy. They're clearly comfortable. Sometimes you just get genuine like people coming in and just like screaming and ridiculous. And you're like, okay, all right, let's Emma. You get medical emergencies. Like I've had people just like pass out in our store and they could just be fainting for, number of reasons, but it's a really serious thing that you have to deal with. Theft, oh my God, it's just honestly like the most annoying thing to deal with. There was like a Lego theft ring of people who were going into retailers, whether it be Barnes & Noble, Target, wherever, and just running in and grabbing Legos and just running with spider wraps. Like nothing that you do for the loss prevention mattered. And that was a crazy time. And it stopped. Like luckily, if you look up like Lego theft ring, there's a picture of police had confiscated thousands of dollars of Legos that were just like sprawled out from a storage unit or something. As far as like customer interaction, I had a customer who specifically was very upset with a Pride display and was like, "You guys have full," and we were like, "You don't have to buy them. Then it's just not for you, and that's okay." For Jewish American Heritage Month, we created an end cap. My store manager actually happens to be Jewish, and he was very happy with the end cap that I created. I did some research on it because I'm not personally Jewish. It's like a celebration of Jewish contribution to American culture. So I chose books that were written by Jewish American authors, specifically ones that were very proud of their Jewish American heritage, not against it. There are some authors that did speak like against it, that I was like, they're not going on here. I had a customer come in who apparently didn't read my sign and was very upset and just totally took everything down and was making their own display. And I came out and was like, what are you doing? She was like, this is disgusting. This is a disgrace. None of these books are about the Jewish experience. None of these books are. And I was like, they're not. I was like, all of the authors are Jewish American. It says it on the sign. And she was like, oh, well, I didn't I didn't realize. I was like, yeah, you didn't read. I know. It's okay. Separately from that, there was a customer who had an altercation in the parking lot. So like a customer came in and was walking down the center aisle of our store, and another customer just came running in after them and like dragged them, hit them. And we were like, we have to call the police. One of our regulars got in the middle of it and held the guy down and was like sitting on him waiting. We get crazy people at our store.
Another huge thing that was big whenever I was working there versus now was the music and movie section. We had a whole section, and we had a person that was manned in that section 24/7. And we had like listening stations set up where you could play CDs. CDs are these little round objects that if you put into a little CD player, it plays music. I don't know if you know what that was, but you could come in, buy CDs, buy Blu-rays, buy DVDs, and that was huge. That was like 20-something% of our sales. We didn't have a big game section, and I was curious what the music, movies, and games looked like now, because I'm pretty sure there's way more games, way less movies, if not any.
That has changed completely. At our store, we don't even have a CD and DVD section anymore. Music still does very well, like vinyl, K-pop CDs do pretty good. We still have a vinyl display because that's very popular right now, and those stay pretty much like behind the register. Games is huge, definitely. It's a huge section. It's expanded so much. We have like a puzzle wall, a game wall, and then like displays all in the section too, to like get as much represented as possible.
Another thing that was absolutely just massive whenever I was working there was the membership system. It was either a one-time payment of $25 or a monthly $25. You got discounts and you got food in the cafe. It didn't work like it does now, where it's like loyalty cards, where if you buy 5 you get 1. It's literally just like, give us $25 and we might give you something. And people, loved it, but we had to push that stuff all the time. Remember, like I said, it was very corporate. So they were like, you selling memberships? Are you selling fucking memberships, you little puppet? Dance for me. Dance. They pushed that a lot harder. And I know they have memberships now, but I kind of wanted some insight as to what the membership system looks like nowadays.
The program has changed. The easy breakdown of it is like, it comes with a lot more perks and a reward system. You get the same 10% discount. You also get a canvas tote bag, which is pretty much the $20 difference. And then on top of that, you get the reward system. So every $10 you spend, you get a stamp. When you collect 10 stamps, you get a $5 off coupon. You get a drink upgrade in the cafe, and you get 10% off on top of that. We do a lot of triple stamp promotions. So if you come in on a certain weekend and we're doing triple stamps, when you would normally get 1, you get 3. And that gets you to the $5 rewards like really fast. It does really pay off if you're there every once in a while. They push the membership, but I think with a much better agenda, personally. Realistically, they've told us in our training, sell the membership that makes the most sense for the customer. So if you have a customer that's checking out with hundreds of dollars worth of stuff, and they're going to save $20-something with the membership alone, they're like paying for the membership anyway. They're clearly going to come back. They clearly buy a lot from our store. Like, it makes sense for them. If they're checking out with like one book and it's $20, you offer them the free membership, but don't go pushing an additional $40 charge on someone who's in and out with an $18 book. They're still pushing it, but for the customer, not necessarily for the company, in my opinion.
So going back to what we were talking about earlier about how corporate we were, they gave us absolutely no control. We were good little worker ants. We were cogs in the machine that kept the Barnes & Noble engine a-churning, right? So when someone came in and they asked for a recommendation, we would look up a book in our system and it would show us books that were similar to that. We had no autonomy to be able to say like, oh, you like Hunger Games, that means you should read blah, 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 blah. I haven't worked there in a really long time. I don't know. But I was curious now because anytime I walk up, I see these little placards under books all the time that say, oh, Tori recommends reading this because she really liked it. And you're like, oh, thanks, Tori. And then you read it and it was the worst book you ever read. And you say like, Tori, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why did you do this to me? Just kidding. Toys R Us. But it seems like employees now there have a little bit more autonomy. So I wanted a little bit more explanation about that. So I went and asked her about that as well.
In our store, and I think in Barnes & Nobles as a whole, we get to have a lot of creativity with our displays. They used to have a planogram for your tables. This table is going to have this book on it, this book on it, this book on it. Now they'll say, all right, like, do you have an idea for a table? What do you want to make? Around Valentine's Day, we did like a anti-Valentine. We got to be really creative. We got to put like American Psycho, like stuff that's like the worst dates you could imagine in these novels. It was just really fun. And that's what I think really drives the growth on TikTok. You get to make it fun and interactive and something that people are going to be like, oh, look at this cool thing I saw at my local Barnes & Noble. I know it was very structured to a T, but again, just a big thing for Barnes & Noble is it depends on your customers. If you're in an area near local water, you're going to probably have like really big sales on your fishing books. Somewhere where I am, not really near water, more like a city area, we're not always really big on our fishing books. It's just like, why would you make this really curated display with these books that the whole company is putting up if it doesn't work for your customer? They're really focusing on letting the store speak for itself while following some underlining guidelines to keep it looking uniform and not straying too far from what they want to see.
There are a few things that keep me up at night. My dad's crippling gambling addiction from when I was young, my mom's crippling alcoholism from when I was young, and big event releases at Barnes & Noble. I worked there for Harry Potter 6, I worked there for Harry Potter 7. I worked there for Twilight books. I worked there for Hunger Games books. I worked these events. It was absolutely insane. For Harry Potter 6, this is a funny story. Spoilers if you haven't read Harry Potter for some reason. I don't know why you wouldn't have. In the 6th book, spoiler, Dumbledore gets killed by Snape.
Oh no!
We had a guy get the 6th book, thumb to the back, read it, and then run throughout the store. We had lines of people wrapped around the store waiting to buy this book. It was a midnight release. No one knew anything that was going on, and there were hundreds of people there. He saw that Snape killed Dumbledore, and he ran throughout the store screaming that Snape kills Dumbledore. I hate that. But anyway, I was curious if they had any big event releases like that anymore, because I feel like midnight releases aren't really a thing. You know, midnight movies used to be shown exactly on midnight. Now they're shown at like 7 the day before. Midnight games are just kind of like put out on digital when you're asleep. You wake up, you're like, oh yeah, there's that game I wanted. Cool. Except for GTA 6. That's never coming. What are big release events like now?
We do a lot now. We've had a lot of big events previously that I've run. We have a lot of big ones coming up. The new Hunger Games book is coming out, so we're doing a midnight release for that, which can be a lot. It is daunting, but I personally really like it, and I have a really good team that is very helpful in that process. Our events have been so fun. We had TJ Klune did a book signing with us. Coming up, we have Gregory Maguire, the author of Wicked. He's going to be there soon. Lori Gilmore for like the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. That was a really big TikTok book. That one, we have the tickets capped at 200. We've reached our max for that. Now is the time that they're coming back. Since the Harry Potter books, they weren't. Like, there was no midnight release parties happening. But I think that it's definitely something that's going to continue.
Also, we never had things like Book Talk or BookTube dictating taste and trends and things like that. We had to just go by what the best sellers were, like word of mouth. I didn't discover Harry Potter until I was like 12, and I heard little Timmy at school talking about it. He also had to explain to me what a girl's period was. My parents weren't very forthcoming with me at all, actually. Timmy taught me a lot. I feel like that's kind of what it was. Like you heard through the grapevine, through the rumor mill, from a friend at church, whatever. But now BookTube and Book Talk are telling you exactly what to read and what's popular. Oh, you don't have an opinion of yourself? I'll give you one. And then they do. And then you go out and buy that. Book Talk and BookTube really do dictate a lot of what sells in these stores. And so I was curious, like, you know, oh, do you see a book trending on Book Talk? And then the next day, a swath of people come in asking for that particular book. So I asked her about that and the kind of influence that she sees from people like me telling you what to read.
It's exactly that. I read a lot, so my TikTok is very curated to like bookish content. The things that are getting recommended to me, and I go into work the next day being like, oh, I wonder if we have that. Like, where is that? Let me find it. Inherently, by doing that, then the next 5 people that come in that are like, hey, do you have? I'm like, all right, this has to go on a table. We have had so many people come in. I was looking for it. They're looking for it. They want it. And then even then, I see sometimes things that people are like, this was awful, like this was so bad, don't bother. But sometimes the way they do it, it makes you want to read it anyway. I think people are still looking for this. Yeah, I kind of want to put it up towards the front, get it on a table.
And the last thing I was curious about, because it seems like they gave so much more autonomy to employees these days. Back in my day, they literally just hired me on the spot. I came in, they were like, can you breathe oxygen? I was like, yeah. They were like, do you have a way to get here? I don't even care if you have a car. Can you get to this place on time? And I'm like, yeah. And they were like, okay, you're hired. But now I feel like that you can't just do that, because I was extremely unqualified. I didn't read books back then. You messed up in hiring me. You should not have done that. But now I feel like the hiring process is probably a little bit different because they give their employees so much autonomy. So what does that process look like now?
Like I said, I was a holiday hire, so I feel like I had a little more leniency. They were just hiring for the holidays, and then I stuck around because I did really good at my job. They liked what I was doing. For me personally, they did ask bookish questions, and I feel like that is the focus now. As far as like what I've been learning, because I'm a part of the managerial team now, is it's very book heavy because we're a bookstore, and that's the importance of it. It is, I'll say, very difficult now, I think, to get hired at Barnes & Noble, just because there's not as much of a turnover rate. People really like what they're doing. Like, if you're working with books, why would you want to stop? You know, if you like books, if you're getting a really good discount, our discount's like 50% now, it's fantastic. There's just not a very large turnover rate, so there's not a lot of positions available. But when they do become available, the focus is books. They ask what you're currently reading. They ask you what you've read previously and why you enjoyed it, why you didn't enjoy it. My biggest pet peeve is a lot of people feel that because they're in an interview, they need to like talk up what they're reading. So they'll be like, oh, I just finished Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, and like, great. That's great. Like, sure, tell us about it, sell us on it. But also, if you like are a nerd and love graphic novels, like, we sell graphic novels, you know, like you have to be passionate about what you're reading so that you can be passionate about selling it. I've even said it on interviews where I'm like, oh yeah, I've read this manga, and they're like, oh, me too. I loved that. And I'm like, why didn't you say that? Because that's really important. It's like our top selling section, and you didn't talk about it. It's definitely book heavy, and you can tell when people are actually passionate about what they're talking about in relation to the books they're reading, and when people are just trying to get through the interview. A lot of the booksellers are very personable, and like everyone feels like a personality hire because they are. Everyone has to be able to sell the books, a genuine love for books.
So to sum up, it was a great conversation. It was very eye-opening. I think one of the biggest things that Barnes & Noble did, and a lot of it is luck. You know, everything in business is luck. I've owned my own business before. I own this business now, which is failing miserably. Please like and subscribe and comment so that I don't go bankrupt again. But owning business is hard. So a lot of it is luck. And I think it was kind of the perfect storm for Barnes & Noble. When COVID hit, everyone was inside looking for things to do. And right around then is the time that they decided to give more autonomy to the employees to dictate what books are popular, what books you should read, how to decorate the store. She was talking a lot about like she is in charge of making the events and the end caps and things like that. Like they had full autonomy. We had pages telling us exactly what to put where, and it was the same across the entire network. Now it's a lot more localized. It depends where you live. It depends what they think books sell well in your area. They let the employees decide that, which is great. I mean, I think that they are doing amazing things. I think empowering your workers to be creative and to think outside of the box and to think about their local communities and to cater to their local communities is awesome and a huge part of why they're sticking around. And they're very much leaning into the book talk thing. They're very much leaning into the booktube thing. And the way that they're catering to their communities and empowering their employees are doing awesome. And I think it was kind of the perfect storm whenever they started to do all of this around the time that COVID hit and everyone was looking for more solitary activities and for looking for things to do, that Barnes & Noble was like, oh, we're kind of changing our model now. And it kind of just, took off from there. So a little bit of luck, a little bit of reassessing, but they're doing all great things. And I am more than happy to see Barnes & Noble thriving. Hopefully our library system is doing the same. We'll do the same through these troubling times, unprecedented times, if you will. I will be making a video about that in the future. The current state of our libraries, what that will look like, what it looks like going forward. So be sticking around for that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. My name is Turner Page. I make videos every week about books, booktube, mostly fantasy sci-fi, some high concept stuff. I am huge into psychology and sociology, so I talk a lot about the psychosociology of books. You can see how much I'm into it. So if you like this video, please let me know in the comments. If you want to see more generic stuff like book reviews and what I read this month and stuff like that, let me know. I could do that as well. But we appreciate you sticking around. I'll see you guys next week.